Who killed the Pac-12, as well as the coaches poll just dropped, so we'll talk about that and a little bit more here on Unfair Sports, where we take a pensive approach to the sports conversation. I am your host, Jay. Thank y'all for pulling up here to the YouTube channel, as well as listening wherever podcasts are downloaded and listened to. While you're here, please like, subscribe, rate, review, give us 5 stars. And think we deserve it? Let's give us 5 anyway and gift it. And so, on today's episode of Unfair Sports, we got a lot of college football content to dive into, and we're going to start with this. Who officially killed the Pac-12, as well as is the Big 12 better, and does it make sense who the ACC is shopping for? We'll also talk about the college football playoff, and I'm curious to what they're going to do next. And then we'll wrap things up with the coaches poll. The preseason poll's in, and I'm going to tell you where my Sooners are and if it makes sense or not. And so we're going to have some fun here on today's return show. Hit us up on the Unfair fan line, 430-901-1906, and let us know what you think of the show. We would love to get your strongest opinions and possibly add you on here to really go back and forth. So hit us up, 430-901-1906. Oh man, it has been a while. This is the return episode of the Unfair Sports podcast, the official namesake one that I've done for years. We're going to bring it back in full throttle. Today's Thursday, later than normal, but I think what we're going to do is bring this back on Wednesdays. And so before I dive into what was going on, if you're watching the replay on this, in the description below, you'll see the chapters for every single segment. You can just skip this portion of it if you don't really care and go right to the content. But I want to explain kind of what went down with the pod. So started this back in 2017 and with a buddy, and we've been doing this for a while, and then we started expanding into college football. Then I started really focusing on that. And so now that we've grown, we're at 10,000 subscribers. Thank you so much for the love and support. We're going to bring back the namesake. I want to get back into expanding and talking into more content than just, OU and all that jazz. But the Unfair Sports podcast focus is going to be really college football and a little bit of stuff here and there. We're going to try to make this as unique as possible and fun as possible. So just, brace yourself. It's going to be a good time. And so this one will come out weekly. Sooner fans, don't worry. The Sooner or Later podcast, Sooner or Later sports show will still come on Sunday evenings. We'll be doing that mainly as like a recap from the season, from the games and stuff. That will stay here. But this Wednesday episode, I plan on having come on, premiere in the mornings on Wednesdays. So y'all can just enjoy the content as you drive to work, and we'll talk college ball, all the top topics in college football, as well as maybe mix in some NFL and stuff as we go. So thank you for pulling up. Thank you for being around. We're going to dive right into some of the fun stuff because honestly, college football is seeing a massive change, and a lot of people aren't fond of it, right? Me personally, I'm not, upset by it. I think that it can be for the better because college football seen change for years. Like, this isn't the first time that we've seen a realignment. This isn't the first time we've seen teams bolt and go places. I mean, this has happened since, the inception of college football as everybody was establishing themselves. Now, the big thing is the main traditions out there have been around for a long time. I mean, the Big 12 has been around since the 90s. And so that's going on, 30 years of existence, and now we're seeing that reshift. The Big 12's gotten bigger, Big 10 as well. We had the Big 8 as well as the Southwest Conference, and now all of that's basically merged and shifted towards the Southeast, and the PAC existed, and it's so many conferences that have come and gone, and it's just weird that in the modern era of college football, we're going to see a complete revamp. But I do have one team to blame on this. We're going to ask this question: who killed the Pac-12? And y'all may think that, USC and UCLA just destroyed the Pac, and I put Pac-12 here mainly because the Pac-12 is what they are today. But who killed the Pac? It was not the USCs and UCLAs of the world. The killer of the Pac was Nebraska. Yes, folks, it was Nebraska. And you're going to ask yourself, what does Nebraska have to do with this? Like, what does that have to do with the price tea in China? Like, what does Nebraska got to do with the Pac? Well, the reason why I say that is because Nebraska started the big domino effect of teams breaking off in the 2000s. So since 2010, Nebraska started and bounced out to the Big Ten. And they did that for a lot of reasons. But one of the real big reasons that have been reported is that they did not like that Texas Longhorn Network. They didn't like how the distribution of money was not really equal. And they felt like they deserved more respect. So they went to the Big Ten, who gives an equal share to everybody. And, Texas had the Longhorn Network, and they were doing their own thing for a while. And, they were even, I think, pondering going into the independent role, but they didn't do it. So Nebraska bounces. And so let's look at it this way. This is how everything started. Initially this is the Big Ten set up. This was your Pac-10, your Big 12, Big East, all of them. But the dominoes started with Nebraska making their move. The Nebraska moves. Then Colorado gets the invite to go to the PAC. They make a move. Rutgers and Maryland follow Nebraska up to the Big Ten. And, so that's breaking up your Big East. That's breaking up, just about every program you could think of started to shift. That's the domino that led to everything, because the Big 12 was like, okay, we're losing a namesake in Nebraska, a legendary program. We've got to fix this. And so what was their fix? They went and picked up West Virginia, which started off the weird global thing to try to save the conference. And then all of the dominoes started beginning. You start to see the ACC say, yeah, we're going to go ahead and increase ourselves and grab more schools. And then the Pac-10 went out and grabbed Colorado. They got Utah, made themselves 12. And so the Big 12 was basically left for dead. Big 12 conference with 10 teams is basically what they were forever. And the Big 10 or the Big Conference was the conference with 14, 16, 18 teams. They weren't 10 anymore, but they kept the namesake. I digress. We saw that, and now this is what it looks like. Shout out to Fox College Football for the graphic. It's really good, showing everybody and where they're now located as we see the shift. The SEC has grown, adding Oklahoma and Texas and but the biggest one here is the bottom is at 4. PAC ain't got nobody. So we ask ourselves again, who killed it? And it was Nebraska. Nebraska really did. Mainly because in 2010, I don't know if y'all knew this, 2010, Nebraska leaves. They leave because of the reasons why I told you. Well, there was an article in the Daily Oklahoman, in the Oklahoman, not the Daily, the Oklahoman by Barry Trammell. He wrote June of 2010 that OSU and OU are headed to the Pac-10, sources said. So the Big 12 was about to be this band. They're going to be taken down because Nebraska wanted more money and they wanted more say. And so after that announcement, the PAC was like, okay, well, we're going to go up to Colorado because they're close. We're going to reach out and give invites to all these Big 12 teams. And what Oklahoma basically said was, all right, we'll listen, but we're going to wait to see what Texas does. And the big reason is that we basically move in a unit. We're big rivals, but we're also massive brands. And so we'll move as a unit. And so University of Texas board met. They had a discussion around it, had to make a decision. And guess what happened? They were like, nah, we're good. We're not going to go anywhere. We're going to stay where we are. And we're going to not take on those teams. So that didn't happen. So the Big 12 was basically left for dead. And everyone basically said this conference was going to fall apart at some point. And then as soon as Oklahoma and Texas announced that they were leaving to go to the SEC because we felt like the Big 12 was falling apart, Bowlesby, as well as Yormark, jumped on board. Bowlesby, the old commissioner, and Yormark, the new one, decided, nope, we're going to make the magic happen. And guess what they did? We got more teams. UCF, Houston. I mean, they grabbed TCU back in the day to keep it at 10 when they really needed to. It was getting bad. But they went out and started grabbing some more teams. Cincinnati, BYU got themselves to 14 for this year, back to 12 once OU and Texas are gone. And as soon as USC and UCLA decide to leave, Big 12 got smart. We're going to go ahead and change. We're going to negotiate our TV deal immediately before everybody else really gets going. And they got their deal negotiated to where they have the third best TV contract outside of the SEC and the Big 12, Big 10. They have the third best. And by doing that, they got ahead of the curve and they eliminated themselves being basically left for dead. And by doing that, the PAC lost their negotiation ability because they waited so long to get this TV deal, and losing that major market. All of these TV networks are like, we ain't trying to fool with you no more. And then they went and snatched up Colorado. And as the PAC started to fall apart, they went and got Arizona State and Arizona, adding those cornerstones with Utah and Colorado. And now the Big 12 is looking like they saved themselves big time, right? They brought in some pretty solid programs, ones that are winning, like Utah won the Pac-12 2 years in a row. UCF is competitive. Cincinnati was in the college football playoffs. So they're building with programs that are, potential, competitors, the ones that can compete. So we're going to see what it looks like long term. But I'll tell you this. As I just went through all that lineage, I told y'all who killed the PAC. It was 100% Nebraska. By leaving, they ruined it. So we're going to dive into what the Big 12 is going to look like, the Big 10 is going to look like on the other side. But before we do that, let's pay some bills. All right, let's ask ourselves, are the Big 12 better now that they've added these teams? I mean, they've added Arizona, they added Arizona State and Utah with Colorado. Are the Big 12 a better conference? And so we're going to dive into that. But first, thank y'all for pulling up to Unfair Sports. We appreciate the love and support. Please hit that like button. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe. As well as if you're listening, rate, review, give us 5 stars. If you think we deserve it, just go ahead and give us 5 anyway and gift it. And so let's dive into, has the Big 12 gotten better adding these programs? And I'm going to be honest. I'm going to say yes. And the way they got themselves better is that they negotiated their TV deal so early. We talked about in the last segment. And because of that, they've given themselves some power in college. They have power now. Like they can bully their way around a little bit and show some relevance. And adding a program like Colorado right now with Coach Prime, probably one of the biggest things they did. They're going to be the talk of the town for the next 2 years, regardless of how Coach Prime performs. If it's good, bad, or indifferent, they're going to be talked about. And that's what you want. You want to make sure that you have some media relevance. You want to make sure people are still discussing you in some capacity. And that is what the Big 12 did by going up to Colorado. And I said it when they did it. I was like, Big 12, be smart. Go for Colorado. Get Utah as well. Bring us the holy war. We want Utah for BYU. They don't like each other in the state of Utah. I mean, you ask anybody that's Utah fan or BYU fan, they don't like each other. We appreciate that. That's a good rivalry to have. And then you add Arizona State, which keeps the Territorial Cup together. So you got yourselves, some good solid rivalries. And that, to me, ladies and gentlemen, is the best part about the Big 12 adding those programs along with the UCFs and stuff. Now, the weird thing about all of this is the distance that everybody's going to have to travel to play in these games. But I'll give it to the Big 12 on this one. When they negotiated their television deal, they add provisions to where there's accelerators with ESPN and such if they add programs, if they add more teams. And they added some pretty big markets. I mean, Arizona, you got Phoenix there, baby. Got a pretty good market there. You've got, like Salt Lake City with Utah and BYU. That's an NBA market, so that's big. Colorado, Denver, you got yourself a nice market there. You've got Florida, you got Houston, with the third or second largest, probably the third now, third or fourth largest metroplex in the country, at University of Houston. They've done a great job of maintaining not only relevance, but growing and getting bigger. They basically took advantage of what the PAC did not do when they should have. PAC should have snatched up those other teams when we talked about earlier. But I do think they're better. And so when you look at what they're working with, we're looking at, my goodness, this is going to be fun. This is going to be a fun conference. And if there's anything that's going to be really fun about the Big 12 or whatever they name themselves, it's going to be basketball. Gosh, hoops is going to be fun. You had Arizona with Tech, who recently was in the national championship not too long ago. Baylor, who won a national championship not too long ago. Same thing with Kansas. Oh, my God. Oklahoma State's still historical when it comes to that. Houston, who's been climbing back up the charts on the basketball court. TCU is actually pretty solid. This is going to be a fun conference overall. You've got a lot of things to be excited about, and I'm here for it. I'm going to be watching a ton of Big 12 basketball, mainly because, yeah, they've got some fun teams. So they're going to compete heavily with like the ACCs of the world. Because think about it, with the ACC, Duke and North Carolina are still, kind of redoing themselves. They lost legendary coaches, and so they're starting over. This is going to be fun. This is going to be a good time. I'm all for it. I'm all in on the Big 12 and the way they're set up. So I hope y'all are as excited as I am because Big 12 did a good job. Football-wise, you got some competition there. Now, recruiting-wise, you've got a lot of markets that make sense, a lot of markets for these teams to play in, and hopefully you can go after, like I said, you've got Arizona. I mean, you got the state of Arizona. You got Texas with multiple schools, and so multiple parts from, multiple parts that you take advantage of. From Houston all the way up into the Dallas area. You've got Florida with UCF. Yeah, they've expanded themselves in the proper way. So, Big 12, you did a good job of preventing yourselves from being irrelevant because not very many teams can say they did that. I'm proud of y'all. Y'all taught the PAC what they should have did from the beginning. So, I'm sold on what the Big 12 is going to look like. Hop in the comments. Let your boy know how y'all feel about the Big 12's new look, and do you think that it was a good move for them? We would love to chat with you all. We hop in the comments to talk all the time. So let's dive into the next topic. As we hit about the halfway point of the show, I want to stop and say thank y'all again for tuning in, bringing back this podcast. The goal is to make them about 6 to 8 minute segments, about 4 or 5 of them. So you get about 40, 45 minutes of show to enjoy as you travel and whatnot, listening or watching. I plan on putting it all together and having this for you on Wednesday mornings to start your day. And so today it'll be Wednesday afternoon, but I digress. Thursday afternoon, but the focus will be on Wednesdays moving forward, talking all sports, mainly college football and all that jazz. And so let's dive into our next topic. Now that the PAC is basically dead, we've got 4 teams out there that's still trying to find homes. Cal, Stanford, you've got Oregon State and Washington State. And so there's been rumors that the Big 12 are going to extend offers potentially to Oregon State and Washington State, give them a home, just add to their conference and make it super big, and potentially make it to where, you can have like a West Coast side and the East Coast side, which, smart as heck in my personal opinion. But also there's been conversations, and information came out, is that the ACC has been looking at snatching up Cal and Stanford. And one of the articles that jumped out to me was Cal and Stanford being looked at by them is being pushed by Notre Dame, which has an ACC affiliation outside of football. They're talking about wanting to push Cal and Stanford, but Notre Dame doesn't want to have a home. Like, they won't sign up to join the conference, but they were pushing for the other, smart schools to join, which is fascinating to me. Now, I said this from the beginning when alignment was going on for a while, is that Cal and Stanford, the Big Ten should probably take them just because of the academic side. They bring no football value, but academically they bring a lot. Because Stanford, besides catching lightning in a bottle with Harbaugh and Shaw at the beginning of his run, and then they had Tedford over there at Cal when they won 10 or 11 games. Yeah, you caught lightning in a bottle. And so I'm trying to figure out, what does it look like for those two teams now that they don't actually have a home because the PAC is gone? Do they go to the Mountain West, which would be terrible for them? The Big Ten could have snatched them up, but they're not. Like I said, they don't bring football value. They bring academic, but not football. But the ACC is shopping out there. They're also shopping not only Cal and Stanford, but SMU. That one was the most intriguing for me because if the ACC goes after SMU, in which SMU has a lot of money, and a lot of people talk about how, because of course SMU is the only school really in the Dallas Metroplex, and the Dallas area. Fort Worth has, of course, TCU, but the bigger thing about SMU is that if they didn't get the death penalty because of all the crookedness they were doing back in the 80s or whatnot, that they may be a powerhouse. They could have been a powerhouse in college football. And now they've invested a lot of money into their program, $200 something million for like facilities and stuff of that nature. So, and they've got boosters that are willing to throw more money into it because, like I said, SMU has money. There's a chance that we could be seeing them compete if they can get themselves to a bigger conference. They could be a threat to everybody that shops in Dallas. And that includes my Sooners. That includes the Texas Longhorns, TCU, Baylor. They could become a threat if they've got the financial backing to go out there. Hop in the comments. Tell me what y'all think. Y'all think that SMU could really be competitive if they moved into another conference? Because that's the one that fascinated me about the ACC's looking at. Not only them, but going all the way west, which I think going west is ridiculous. Logistically, it makes no sense for them to travel. But if the ACC does do this, it's a great way for them to renegotiate that horrible contract they have that is also getting Florida State and Clemson, potentially Miami, trying to find a way to get the heck up out of there. Because truth be told, they're your breadwinners. They're your three programs on the football side that bring in all the money. Basketball is Duke and North Carolina. No one cares about anybody besides Florida State, Clemson. Miami's cared about because they've historically had moments where they've been really great and then really bad, then really great, then really bad, and we don't know what they really are. But I'll tell you this. The crazy part about all of this is that the ACC is actually looking at going west. Why would you do that to yourselves? That is a trek. And, I mean, what value? Cal and Stanford, look, football-wise, sorry, Cal Stafford fans out there. I mean, if y'all do exist, there's not much value. I mean, y'all are in California, yes, but it's USC and UCLA. They've always been the gold standard on the football field out there. And Cal, like I said, had some runs. Y'all had Deshaun Jackson, Marshawn Lynch, Aaron Rodgers. Y'all had some years where I was like, man, Cal they keep this up, boom, they could be doing something, but that's not something y'all care about. Y'all are academic institutions. Y'all one of the top public schools, if not the top one in the country. And Stanford is the Ivy League of the West. That's something to hang your hat on. It's to be excited about. But we got to ask ourselves, what sense does it make for the ACC to be shopping west and trying to figure out the logistics of getting y'all back and forth? Hopefully Oregon State and Washington State finds a home. They deserve it. It sucks that we're losing a lot of traditions regionally. But, I mean, this is a business, and this is the reason why I'm here. Talking sports and watching them is now a business, and that's kind of where our life is at. So, hop in the comments. Let me know what y'all thoughts on ACC shopping out west. What do you think about the ACC going for SMU? What do you think about Notre Dame trying to barter a deal or be in the middle as a mediator to convince the ACC to snatch up Cal and Stanford? Love to hear from you all. You can also hit us up on the Unfair Fan Line, 430-901-1906, or hop in our Discord. The link is in the description below, and so is the phone number. Love to chop it up with you all and dive into that. So let's jump to the next topic, which I think is going to be even funner, is figuring out what the hell we're going to do with the college football playoffs. All right, college football playoffs now have to make some changes. They got to make some decisions and decide how they want to do things. Because as you all know, 2025, the college football playoffs will be expanded to 12 teams. And now that we've got all this conference realignment, does it really make sense to go to 12? Now, granted, even with this realignment, not all of these schools are going to be able to play each other. And there's going to be a lot of debates similar to the BCS and even before that on who should be going into the playoffs, who should get the berth, who should be the teams playing. So we're going to have this discussion for a while, and regardless of how much we would like to not have this discussion, we're going to have this discussion. Why? Because this is what happens. College football is always going to put themselves in a position because there's not enough games played for them to be able to really have definitive teams that they can pick. There's always going to be teams looking on the outside in. Teams are going to say, oh, if you gave us a chance, we could have won that game, blah, blah, blah. There's always going to be that conversation. So now we've got to ask ourselves, does it make sense to expand? And so it's funny because I saw this graphic that popped up on social media of what it could look like if we do college football playoffs. And it's from a Texas reporter or whatnot, Kyle, which is really cool. I looked at this and I was just like, I was up here, Birdman in my hands trying to figure out, is this something that makes sense? So as you look at it, they're talking about having the first place of all four of the Big Four conferences, because the PAC is no longer part of the Power. It's the Power Fours, and then giving them second, third, and fourth berths. Now, this is the thing that I objected with. I don't think you should have more than 2 per conference. And I say that because I liked the direction they were going with the 12 teams. Your 6 highest rated conference champions. I like that because that gives G5s a chance. And I'm going to say this to the moon and back. Every team that can find a way to go to undefeated deserves the opportunity to get boat raced by Bama, Georgia, USC, UCLA, Ohio State. They deserve the opportunity because you never know what's going to happen. And Joe Klatt said this numerous times on his show in the past. He said that 1 to 4 is usually 1 to 3, 1 to 4, depending on the year, is usually where, that's your gold standard. Top teams, they're probably generational that year. But in between there, sometimes 4, but 5 down to like 45, 50, the separation is very minimal. Like, they can beat each other. And so that's where the fun of college football is because there's opportunities for everybody to lose. You don't get that if you are if you don't give them the opportunity to play each other. You watch the bowl games are usually always better than the playoff games. The playoff games are rarely close. Like this past year, we got lucky. The first round was fantastic. Both games were good. TCU, Michigan was really good. Ohio State, Georgia was really good. You do not get that often. Go look back at the old ones. We've watched Alabama get blown out. We've watched Alabama blow people out. We've seen, Washington get beat up. Notre Dame, Oklahoma's lost 4 years in a row. We've seen all of that. We've seen all of these blowouts and all of that jazz. And it's like, okay, can we get some good games here? And how do you determine that? And the thing is go look at the recruiting numbers. Look at the recruiting charts. Look at the top recruiters, the programs with the best recruitments. Don't look today, though. I mean, you look today, it looks up in the air, especially with NIL. But when you get to the end of the cycle, when recruiting's done and National Signing Day is hit, it's usually the same teams. It's usually the same ones. And certain ones are really good at using their talent and others are terrible at it. You know who I'm talking about. And so because of that, that's why you see these generational teams. Like Alabama's got a generational team coming in about 2 years. We'll say 2. Because they signed like 9 5-stars like last year. Texas A&M was supposed to have that. I think they had like 7 5-stars and 5 of them have already transferred. So that doesn't help your cause, right? But Bama's aren't. They're there. And that team is going to be generational in a couple of years. So you've got to brace yourself. They're going to have another team that's going to just blast everybody in college football. So don't think that Nick Saban's done. It's not over for him. They've added a lot of talent. But I digress from that. My deal with the college football playoff is they're going to have to shift this. And so this is what my thing is. I don't think we should go with 12. I think we should pare it back. Let's go to 8. I think 8 would be safe. Or keep it at 4. But I think 8 will be more fun. And I say that because what made 12 so much fun is that those first games were going to be just like the NCAA tournament, just like March Madness. What's your favorite part about March Madness? Hop in the comments and tell me that. Because I bet you it's the first weekend, the first 4 days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Just a ton of college basketball and upsets galore. But statistically, nobody past 10 makes it past the Elite 8. Very rare. Like 1% chance of history. It's usually your 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s that make it to the Final Four. So in the beginning, it's fun because it's just great games and entertainment down to the wire, buzzer beaters, Cinderella stories. And then the Cinderella turns back into a pumpkin right about the Elite Eight. And the top teams take back over and they usher themselves into the playoffs. Now, last season, of course, was different with like San Diego State, and we saw it like with Tech and stuff, because with the extra COVID year, you got a lot of teams that's got super seniors. That's going to die off in the next 2 years. And so because it's going to die off in the next 2 years, you're not going to have that same setup as you did. You're not going to have all those players. You're going to have all those veterans on the teams. And so since the veterans won't be there like that, you're going to go back to the norm. It's going to move back to the median like it always does. And you're going to have your top tier teams that do the best recruiting are going to be the ones that's going to stay at the top. Now, granted, like I said, your Bama's getting 9 5-stars, which is ridiculous, of course. And you're starting to see some similar movement with like Oklahoma and Texas, as well as Georgia's maintaining their dominance in recruiting. Florida State, if you've watched them this year, they're starting to snatch up a lot of players. And so Clemson still consistent with their ratings in the top 10s. Tennessee's putting themselves in the top 10 on a regular basis. And so those are teams to keep your eyes on, but the ones that stay in the top 5 year after year after year are the ones that are going to dominate college football in the next few years. As long as the coaching is there, they're going to dominate. So that's period, point blank. Your Final Four is probably not going to be that fun at football. It's going to be a lot of blowouts and butt kickings, and it's just going to be what it is. And that's what the product is today. You can't do anything about it. The only way to fix it is to force coaches to leave their programs after a certain amount of time, which sounds stupid. Believe me, I know it's the same thing. It sounds ridiculous. Why would you force a coach to leave his job just because he's so successful? Can't do anything about it. Success is all based upon coaching and all of that jazz. And so if there's anything I can say about the college football playoff is they've got to find a way to adjust it to where it's going to be fun, entertaining, long-term. I don't want to watch teams get just shellacked all the times, yet and still, if you find a way to go undefeated as a G5, which is really hard to do regardless of what conference you're in. I know y'all played Little League. It ain't easy to go undefeated, or you've coached it. It's hard. If you can go undefeated, you deserve the opportunity to get boat raced, because you never know. We may get a Cinderella story out of nowhere with something like that. A fumble could happen, a turnover, an injury may just change the trajectory of it. And attrition and injuries is part of the game. So you can use that excuse, oh, we were healthy, we would have won. You're probably right. Should have been healthy, because it unfortunately happens to all of us, and that's the game. So hop in the comments, tell me what you think. College football playoff revamp. What do you want to see? Would love to hear from you all and engage with you through this video. So let's pay some bills. Hop on the next one. All right, let's wrap this bad boy up. Put a bow on it. We're going to jump right into the coaches poll. So the preseason coaches poll released a couple days ago, and I've been mulling through it, looking at it, trying to decide how do I truly feel about it. Like what makes sense? Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? I don't know. We all ask that same question. We don't know what's going on. Blah, blah, blah. I'm curious to how y'all feel about it. Hop in the comments to start us off. Let me know. Let your boy know what's your thoughts on the new coaches poll. Because when I saw it, I looked over it. And of course, for me as a selfish person that I am, I went to go look for my teams. And I looked at my teams and I said, how do I feel about my squad and their placement in this poll? And so, of course, I went through, looked for my Vols, looked for my Sooners, and I'm just like, this is interesting. We have Oklahoma here at a number that, if you ask a Sooner fan, they're going to be like, sounds familiar. I want to give a shout out to, Sooner 360? They were the first ones that I saw it online for, as they were talking about it. And they were talking about how Oklahoma is at 19. And there's a lot of similarities to where they are in comparison to, what we've seen from there in years past, right? The 19th spot on the poll. coaches poll. Number 19. Good old 19. Y'all probably asking, right? Why you keep repeating good old 19? Because if you are a Sooner fan, that is exactly where Oklahoma was in 2000. After getting a new coach, after making changes, and they are at the point where it's like, oh, where'd that come from? So let's take a look at this. Look at the coaches poll real quick. Let me get it loaded up. It decided to move slow for me today, so we will get it. Let's take a look at this. All right. Here's your coaches poll. We have, of course, Georgia, Michigan, Alabama, Ohio State. I'm going to talk through the ones that I feel like should be in better spots. LSU, USC, Penn State, Florida State, Clemson, and Tennessee round out your top 10. Now, I'm going to say this about the top 10. This is the thing that bothers me. Florida State should be higher. They went, 11-2, 11-3 last year, and they basically brought back everybody. That defense is loaded. They got Jared Verse to come back. I'm trying to figure out how, because he was a top 10 pick, period, if he would have left. But yeah, they finished with a really, really, really good season. They finished 10-3 last year. Clemson was 11-3. I think Florida State should have been higher. Penn State had a solid year, like they just about always do. They finished 11-2. They're bringing back some veterans. They did some pretty good stuff in the portal. But I think Florida State should be higher. LSU's at a good spot. I think LSU's about right because LSU brings in them, and Florida State bring probably the most senior quarterbacks besides your USC's and North Carolina with like Drake May, and Oregon bringing in back Bo Nix, who's been in college football for 8-9 years. But Florida State and LSU, Jordan Travis and Jane Daniels, they're one of the few teams that aren't breaking in new quarterbacks. Like Bama's got a new quarterback. Ohio State has a new quarterback. Granted, Michigan doesn't either. J.J. McCarthy, which they're number 2. So that's why I don't have a problem with where they're at. Georgia's bringing in new quarterbacks. I would think that these teams that had their quarterbacks lead them pretty far, especially like LSU going into the SEC championship game, probably should be moved up the chart a little bit more. But that's fine. So back to my teams. Tennessee at 10. It's fascinating that there's that kind of faith in Joe Mixon right now and Josh Heupel. I respect it. Oklahoma at 19. So Oklahoma at 19, the coaches poll, they were 19 in 2000 as well. Both teams had a lefty transfer quarterback with a second-year head coach who was coming off one of the worst years at Oklahoma in a while. I don't know. Coincidence? I think not. And so I'm going to ride the hopium train for my Sooners because them at 19, like I said, is a really good spot. And I think only thing they can do is go up, especially on the defensive side of the ball. The Sooners have revamped the defense side of the ball. There's absolutely no excuse for this team to not be better this season on that side, especially with not only the players they brought in, but the coaching staff is known for being defensive people. And so they figured out what they needed. They processed out the people they needed to process out. And now they're focusing on bringing a better product to the field. And so I think the Sooners have an opportunity to shock the world once again. I'm going to be on the hopium. I'm going to continue to believe in BV we trust. As you can see right there, in BV we trust. Because I do think that Oklahoma has a good chance of shocking the world with not only the ease of their schedule. Honestly, Texas got a really easy one too. But with the players they have and the potential performance we're going to see. So I'm excited about this season. Hop in the comments. Let your boy know what's your thoughts on this coaches poll. If you're a Sooner fan, tell me what's your thoughts on Oklahoma at 19 and all the coinky dinks that come around it. Do you think that Oklahoma has a good chance of shocking the world again? And If you are new to the channel, if you made it this far, hit that like button as well as subscribe. We'd love to have you. We're at 10,000. We're running to grow to 100,000 is the goal. We're going to be a big show and do some fun stuff, have some big production. That's the long-term goal. But we appreciate y'all pulling up and joining us as usual. We're going to go ahead and wrap this bad boy up, put a bow in it. So I want to thank y'all for tuning in. Thank y'all for listening. On the audio version, if you've got the podcast, please find it. If you're watching and you just want to listen while you're on the road, just search Unfair Sports. That's where you'll find the standard podcast, the namesake podcast, and then the Sooner or Later Sports Show for all my Sooner fans. You can find that also wherever podcasts are downloaded and listen to. It's every Sunday. We dive into ball. If you know, as you can see, we do a live show every Sunday at 6 p.m. That'll be a recap of the games. It'll be a recap of college football for the weekend. And so, yeah, thanks for tuning in for the return of the Unfair Sports podcast and show. We're going to be doing this every week, Wednesdays, just for you all. Production to get better. I'm still, working out some kinks. And so getting more into long form on top of the short form stuff. So Sooners, don't worry. Still going to be making a ton of content for you all. Still be talking OU football a lot. We're not going to abandon. It's just we're going to expand. So with that, we'll chop it up. I don't know, in a few days. Peace.